Byru's hands trembled as the family gathered in the boardroom, the company's logo gleaming proudly on the wall. For 10 years he had poured his blood and sweat into building that empire from scratch. But instead of pride, his parents' eyes glittered with something else: favoritism. In front of the executives, they handed the CEO title to his younger sister, Chio, as if Byru's years of sacrifice meant nothing. Laughter and congratulations filled the room, but Byru said nothing. He only slid a sealed envelope across the table toward the lawyer. "Read it," Byru whispered. And when the lawyer opened his mouth, silence fell like a heavy storm. Byru started with nothing but a dream and a small desk in a rented room. Every morning before the sun rose, he was already working, planning, and writing ideas that nobody believed would succeed. When others his age were going out to parties, Byru stayed behind, fixing mistakes, calling clients, and learning how to grow a business from scratch. Many times he worked through the night, his eyes heavy with exhaustion, but he refused to stop. He told himself that all this hard work would one day make his parents proud. As the years passed, his company slowly grew. What started as a tiny idea turned into a real office with employees who trusted his leadership. He hired people carefully, treated them with respect, and created something strong with his own hands. But in building this company, Byru had to let go of many things. Friends drifted away because he was always busy. Relationships ended because he never had time to meet or laugh like others. Even sleep became a luxury, as late nights turned into early mornings. Still, Byru never complained. He believed every sacrifice was worth it. He thought of his parents often, imagining the day they would stand by his side and say, "We are proud of you, Byru." He dreamed of that moment, and it gave him strength to keep going even when money was short and the stress felt heavy. Whenever failure tried to knock him down, Byru rose again. When deals collapsed, he fought harder to win the next one. When people mocked him for trying too hard, he reminded himself that he was building something bigger than himself, something that would last for generations. 10 years of sweat, patience, and determination built the company into a shining success, a name respected in the industry. And through it all, Byru never doubted that his parents saw his effort. In his heart, he believed they were watching, waiting for the right moment to finally honor him. He thought the sacrifices of friendships, of love, of sleep, were not wasted. He believed he had proved himself worthy. For him, every late night and every lonely morning was not just about the company. It was about winning the trust, love, and acknowledgement of the people who mattered most, his family. While Byru was spending his nights in the office and his days chasing clients, his younger sister Chio lived a very different life. She never worried about deadlines, meetings, or bills. Her mornings started late, with breakfast already waiting for her on the table. Her afternoons were filled with shopping trips, salon visits, and endless outings with friends. Chio always dressed in the latest fashion, carrying expensive bags and wearing jewelry that turned heads wherever she went. Their parents adored her. To them, Chio was the shining star of the family, the child who could do no wrong. If she wanted something, she only had to mention it once, and it was hers. Cars, trips, money. Everything came easily to her without any effort. She had never walked into Byru's office, never spent a single hour helping him build the company, but she enjoyed every benefit of his hard work. At family gatherings, their parents always introduced Chio with pride. "This is our daughter, our beautiful princess," they would say, smiling as if she carried the family name on her shoulders. Byru often stood beside them, quietly waiting for even a small word of recognition. But while Chio was praised for her looks and charm, Byru's sacrifices went unnoticed. Chio, too, played her role well. She laughed loudly, shared stories of her travels, and posed for pictures that their parents proudly showed to relatives. She never thought of the struggles her brother faced. She did not see the long nights he spent awake, the deals he fought to win, or the tears he hid when things went wrong. To her, life was about enjoyment, and she believed it would always be that way. Even when the company grew strong, Chio never once asked how it all happened. She assumed it was the family's natural success, not realizing that it was Byru's sweat and sacrifice holding everything together. Their parents allowed this belief to grow, often saying, "One day, Chio will shine even brighter." They treated her as if she were the rightful heir to a throne she had never built. The difference between them was sharp. Byru, the silent builder, carrying the weight of responsibility, and Chio the golden child, living freely without worry. Yet in their parents' eyes, Chio remained the jewel, while Bairu's endless efforts stayed hidden in the shadows. The company's 10th anniversary was supposed to be Bairu's proudest day. He had imagined standing before the employees, the board, and even his parents, finally being recognized for the years of work that had built the empire. He arrived at the celebration in his best suit, carrying a quiet hope in his heart. The hall was decorated with banners, lights, and the company logo shining in gold. Guests filled the seats, clapping and smiling, waiting to hear about the future of the business. Bairu believed this was the day his sacrifices would finally be honored. As the program began, his parents walked onto the stage with confident smiles. Bairu sat near the front, ready to stand when his name was called. He pictured himself shaking hands with board members, giving a speech of gratitude, and hearing his parents say they were proud of him. For a moment, everything felt like it was finally falling into place. But then his father's voice broke his dream. "Today," he announced, "we are proud to introduce the new CEO of this company, our daughter Chio." The room froze. A ripple of shock spread among the employees and board members. Bairu's heart dropped. He stared at the stage, unable to believe what he had just heard. Chio walked forward in an elegant dress, smiling brightly, waving as if she had earned the position. Applause started slowly, more out of confusion than excitement. Bairu remained seated, his hands gripping the armrest of his chair. In that single moment, 10 years of sacrifice were dismissed as if they meant nothing. His parents did not mention his name, his hard work, or the foundation he had built. They acted as though the company had always belonged to Chio. Bairu sat in silence, feeling humiliation burn in his chest as colleagues who had seen his effort glanced at him with pity. His parents stood proudly beside Chio, speaking of her fresh vision and bright future, ignoring the truth that she had never once worked a day in the business. Bairu felt invisible, as though he was only a shadow in the room. What was meant to be his day of recognition had turned into betrayal. The bitter announcement cut deeper than any wound he had ever known. And in that silence, Bairu realized his parents had chosen favoritism over fairness, crushing everything he had once hoped for. Bairu sat in the hall, his parents' words still echoing in his ears. As Chio posed for pictures and accepted congratulations, he felt like the ground beneath him had cracked. The humiliation was sharp, not only because the board had witnessed it, but because it confirmed the truth he had tried to ignore for years. His parents had never truly seen him. Memories rushed back like waves. He saw himself alone in the office at midnight, paper spread across the desk, a single lamp lighting his tired eyes. He remembered skipping meals to save money for the business, pouring his profits back into growth instead of into his own comfort. Every step of the way, he thought he was building a legacy for the family. He thought his parents were watching, proud of their son's determination. But now it was clear. They were only waiting for him to finish the hard part. He thought of the vacations Chio had taken. Luxury trips to beaches, resorts, and cities around the world. All of it paid for by the money his company generated. While he was struggling to close deals, she was sipping drinks by the pool. While he was waking up before sunrise, she was still asleep in silk sheets. The contrast was painful, and yet, his parents had celebrated her, not him. It was in that moment Bairu understood. To his parents, he was never the successor. He was simply the worker, the one to build the empire so that Chio could sit on the throne without effort. Every word of praise they had given her, every smile, every proud introduction, they had never been meant for him. The trust he carried in his heart, the belief that they would one day recognize him, shattered completely. It was not just disappointment, it was betrayal. He had given up his youth, his friendships, his peace of mind, only to discover that in their eyes, he was nothing more than a stepping stone for the child they adored. Sitting there, Bairu's hands clenched, not from anger alone but from the realization that he had wasted years seeking validation that would never come. His parents had made their choice clear. They had chosen favoritism over fairness, comfort over sacrifice. And with that bitter truth, Bairu felt the bond between him and his family break into pieces he knew would never be whole again. Bairu left the celebration that night with a heavy heart, but his mind was sharper than ever. The humiliation had cut him deeply, yet beneath the pain was a secret no one in that room knew. For years, while building the company, Bairu had quietly kept records of every important deal. He had signed contracts with partners under his own name, kept intellectual rights for the systems and ideas he developed, and carefully stored documents that proved the company's foundation was his work alone. Most people thought Byru was too focused on the day-to-day business to think about ownership. But he had learned early that hard work was not always enough. Paperwork and proof were what truly spoke in the world of business. Each time he signed a new partnership, he made sure his role was written clearly. Each time he created something new, he filed it under his name. No one paid attention to these details, not even his parents. But Byru never forgot to protect himself. The most powerful weapon of all, however, was not the contracts or the intellectual rights. It was the will of his late grandfather. Long before the company had grown, his grandfather had seen Byru's determination and trusted him with a secret. The old man had written a will that clearly stated the company and its future leadership would belong to Byru, not to his parents, not to Chio. Byru had locked that document away, waiting for the right time. At first, Byru never thought he would need it. He had hoped his parents would see his loyalty and choose him naturally, without the need for legal battles. But after the bitter announcement, the meaning of that will changed. It was no longer just a piece of paper. It was his shield, his weapon, and his only way to reclaim what he had built. Byru understood the power he held. His parents thought they had control, and Chio believed the crown had been handed to her. But they did not know the truth resting in that sealed envelope. He carried it with quiet confidence, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal it to the world. Byru looked defeated and silent, but inside he was holding the key that could turn everything upside down. The real will was his hidden weapon, and when the time came, it would change the future of the company forever. The celebration was almost over, and the hall buzzed with chatter after the announcement. Chio stood proudly beside their parents, receiving handshakes and empty words of praise from board members who were too shocked to resist. Byru sat quietly, his face calm though his heart carried the weight of betrayal. Around him, executives whispered, unsure of what to make of the sudden shift in leadership. Some glanced at Byru with pity, others avoided his eyes, assuming he had lost everything. But Byru was not broken. He waited patiently, letting the clapping fade, letting the excitement settle into a nervous quiet. When the room grew still enough to hear every movement, Byru stood. The scrape of his chair against the floor drew attention, and for the first time since the announcement, all eyes turned toward him. He did not look at Chio or at his parents. Instead, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. Without a word, Byru walked to the front of the room. The lawyer, seated among the executives, straightened in surprise as Byru slid the envelope across the polished table. "Read it," Byru said, his voice steady but firm. The command was simple, yet it carried a weight that made even the air feel heavy. The lawyer looked at the envelope, then at Byru, then at the expectant faces around the room. Slowly he opened the seal. Papers rustled softly as he unfolded the document inside. The executives leaned closer, their expressions puzzled, sensing something important was about to happen. A few exchanged uneasy glances, while others whispered in low tones, wondering what Byru had just placed in the lawyer's hands. Byru stepped back, his eyes calm, watching the lawyer prepare to read. His parents shifted uncomfortably, their earlier smiles fading. Chio's confident expression wavered as she glanced between her brother and the lawyer. The mood in the room shifted from celebration to tension, from pride to unease. The lawyer cleared his throat, scanning the first lines, and his face changed. The executives noticed it immediately, the flicker of shock in his eyes, the tightening of his jaw. Whatever was written on that paper was no ordinary letter. The murmurs in the room grew louder, but Byru remained silent, his hands folded, his gaze fixed on the lawyer. Everyone could sense it now. Something was coming, something powerful enough to shake the ground beneath them. The applause that once celebrated Chio's rise was gone. In its place hung a heavy silence, broken only by the lawyer's steady breath as he prepared to speak the words that would change everything. The lawyer held the papers in his hands, and the weight of the words written on them was clear from the look on his face. The room, once filled with laughter and celebration, had gone silent. Every eye turned to him, waiting for what he was about to say. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and began to read aloud. "This document," he said firmly, "is the last will and testament of the late Mr. Adewole, the founder of this company and grandfather to Bairu and Chio. His voice was steady, but the words hit the room like thunder. Gasps rippled through the audience. Chio froze in place, her smile slowly fading. Bairu's parents exchanged nervous glances, their confidence draining with every sentence. The lawyer continued. In this will, Mr. Adewole clearly states that the ownership and future leadership of the company shall not be decided by his children, but by his chosen heir. And that heir is named here, Bairu. The board members leaned forward, eyes widening in disbelief. The lawyer's voice grew sharper, more powerful with each word. The will explicitly grants Bairu full ownership, control, and responsibility as the rightful successor. No other name is mentioned. No shared power is written. This company belongs to Bairu alone. Murmurs broke out among the executives. Some looked at Bairu with new respect, while others turned to see how his parents would react. Chio's face turned pale, her hands trembling as the truth unraveled before her. She had been celebrated only moments ago, but now the ground beneath her seemed to vanish. Bairu's parents tried to interrupt, but the lawyer raised his hand and continued. This document is legally binding. It carries the full authority of Mr. Adewole's estate. Any attempt to deny Bairu's rightful position would be against the law and against the founder's direct wishes. The room erupted into whispers, shock echoing across the hall. Shareholders nodded slowly, some even clapping softly in approval. They had seen Bairu's hard work for years, and now the will confirmed what they already knew in their hearts. He was the true protector of the legacy. The lawyer placed the papers back on the table and looked directly at Bairu. By the words of your grandfather, this company is yours. You are the rightful heir, the sole owner, and the true leader chosen to carry the vision forward. For the first time that night, Bairu's chest felt lighter. He did not need to argue, beg or fight. The truth had spoken for him, and it had silenced everyone. The moment the lawyer finished reading, the room exploded with shock. Gasps came from every corner as the truth settled in. Executives exchanged stunned glances, board members whispered to one another, and shareholders leaned forward, eager to confirm they had heard correctly. The celebration that had been planned for Chio's big moment had turned into something entirely different, a courtroom of truth. Chio's smile, which had been wide and confident only minutes earlier, slowly disappeared. Her hands tightened around the microphone she held, and her eyes darted across the room, searching for someone to defend her. She tried to laugh it off, but her voice shook. For the first time in her life, she had no script, no easy escape. Their parents, seated proudly at the front, now shifted nervously. In their chairs, the glow of pride they wore earlier had turned into panic. Bairu's mother whispered to his father, urging him to say something, to fix the situation before it spiraled further. His father stood, attempting to take control. This must be a mistake, he stammered. Chio was always meant to lead. Bairu has done well, yes, but he is young and, his voice trailed off when he saw the lawyer lift the will again, shaking his head. The will leaves no space for confusion, the lawyer said firmly. This company, its assets, and its leadership belong solely to Bairu. There is no mistake. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Their parents sat back down, their faces flushed with shame. The board members, once unsure, began nodding in agreement with the lawyer's words. Some clapped softly for Bairu, their support growing clearer with every moment. Chio's face turned pale as realization sank in. Everything she thought was hers, the title, the power, the praise, had vanished in a single reading of a document. She tried to argue, her voice breaking as she said, "But I am the daughter, the chosen one, our parents said." The lawyer cut her off gently but firmly. Your parents were never given the authority to decide. The founder made his choice long ago, and that choice was Bairu. The finality of those words struck her harder than anything. She lowered her head, unable to meet the eyes of the crowd. The applause that followed was not for her but for Bairu, the man she had once dismissed. For their parents, the downfall was even worse. The power they had tried to control slipped through their fingers, and the entire room had witnessed it. Their favoritism, their pride, their attempt to erase Bairu's years of sacrifice, all of it had collapsed in public. And no excuse, no stammered words, could change the truth. The mood in the hall shifted quickly after the lawyer's reading. Moments ago, many board members had been clapping for Chio, offering polite smiles and forced congratulations. But now, their eyes turned toward Bairu with new respect. They remembered the late nights he had spent in the office, the countless times he showed up early to guide the team, and the sacrifices he had made when no one else cared. It became clear to them that the will only confirmed what they already knew deep down. Bairu was the true leader. One by one, board members began to nod in agreement. Some even stood to shake Bairu's hand, praising him openly for his hard work and vision. "You carried this company when no one else could," one said. "You deserve every bit of this," another added. The same executives who once doubted him, who had silently wondered if he could handle leadership, were now rallying behind him with full support. The shareholders followed quickly. They had always valued stability and results, and Bairu had delivered both for years. As they clapped, their voices filled the room with approval. For them, this wasn't just about family. It was about trust in the man who had built the company's success with his own hands. Their applause grew louder, until it became clear that Bairu had the overwhelming backing of the people who truly mattered in the business. Chio, unable to stand the humiliation, snapped. She pushed back her chair and stormed out of the hall, her heels striking the floor in sharp anger. Her face burned with frustration, her pride shattered in front of the very people she hoped to impress. To her, it felt like betrayal, but in truth, it was only justice catching up. The door slammed behind her, leaving an emptiness where her confidence once stood. Their parents remained seated, their heads low. For years, they had placed all their pride in Chio, dismissing Bairu as nothing more than a worker. Now they faced the shame of being exposed in front of everyone. They had not only lost control of the company, but also the trust of the son who had given them everything. Bairu did not look at them with anger, but with a calm distance that spoke louder than any words. The bond between them had been broken, and they knew it could never be repaired. The tide had turned completely. Bairu, once the silent and overlooked son, now stood at the center of respect, authority, and truth. The company was his, and so was the loyalty of the people who had witnessed his resilience. Bairu rose slowly from his seat, the weight of years pressing on his shoulders but no longer bending him down. The room was silent now, every pair of eyes fixed on him. He took a deep breath and finally let his voice carry across the hall. "This company wasn't built on favoritism," he said firmly, his tone steady but full of emotion. "It was built on sacrifice, on sleepless nights, on choices that cost me my youth, my comfort, and sometimes even my peace. And from today, no one will erase my name from what I created." The words struck deeply. They weren't loud, but they were heavy with truth. Board members nodded, shareholders leaned forward, and even those who once doubted him found themselves moved. It was no longer just a declaration of ownership. It was a declaration of identity, of self-worth, and of justice finally taking its rightful place. Then something powerful happened. One by one, people began to rise to their feet. The applause started softly, then grew louder, until the entire hall was filled with a thunderous standing ovation. The sound was not just for his victory. It was for his resilience, his strength, and his unshaken spirit. Bairu stood tall in that moment, shoulders squared, no longer the quiet son hidden behind family shadows. He was not only the CEO by law, but the man who had proven through every trial that he deserved it. The betrayal that once crushed him had now been transformed into a story of triumph. What his parents and sister had tried to take from him became the very reason people now honored him. As the cheers echoed, Bairu's heart steadied. This was not just about reclaiming a company. It was about reclaiming himself. He no longer needed their approval, their validation, or their control. He had turned their betrayal into his greatest victory, and everyone in the room could see it clearly. In that triumphant stand, Bairu wasn't just a leader of a company. He was the man who had taken back his dignity, his voice, and his future.